All right, over to you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Meredith, for having me. Thanks, Kate, for singing my praises. I guess I have to really come with my A game to live up to that. But I'm just so happy to be here, and I know that this is a great group of women. It looks like who are here, and I'm always happy to talk, and especially these intimate spaces. We were talking just before we got started. I like kind of like the cozy little spaces that we can be in and have some conversations about some real topics that hopefully make an impact on all of our lives here. So I'll give a brief background of myself and a bit of an intro. Um, I am a native Londoner. I grew up in London, Ontario. So I think most of us are kind of from the southwestern Ontario region. So I grew up in this neck of the woods. Grew up playing all sorts of sports, really, but focused in on basketball around the age of 13 because I started to get some opportunities in that area. Honestly, I didn't even want to ever leave London. My brother was the one that wanted to go explore the world, go move to New York or Chicago or some big city like that. But I ended up being the one that left and went to the big city because I had some opportunities and eventually got a scholarship down to the States at Pepperdine University in California, where I got a degree in public relations and psychology. And then promptly decided not to put that degree to good use because I went pro in basketball. And that took me overseas. So my first few years, I was in Turkey, which was amazing. I love the country, great experience, great culture. And then my last 8 years playing professionally were in France, specifically in the southwestern region. And a great opportunity there. And obviously, I really loved it because I ended up staying there for 8 years. But in between all of those pro seasons, I was also playing with our national team, so Team Canada for the sport of basketball. And I had the honor of playing 3 Olympics with them. So my first one was London 2012, then Rio 2016, and my last one was Tokyo 2020, where I had the honor of bearing the flag for Team Canada in the opening ceremonies. And it was an incredible career, but I just recently retired actually after Tokyo 2020, which actually happened in 2021 because of the pandemic and all of that. So I've been shifting into a new sphere of my life because I'm really passionate about supporting people to take health and wellness into their own hands through proactive, intentional, and holistic strategies. And nowadays, I do that either speaking in forums like these or workshops or in one-on-one coaching or different wellness programs because on the face of it, really, my whole life has been about health and wellness. I mean, I spent the past 20 years being paid to work out for a living, essentially. But I've played with and against the top players in the world who were perhaps physically healthy in terms of like cardio and muscle mass, but they were not well, nowhere near being well sometimes. So I started to think about the different components of wellness. So not just physical health, but things that help us strive after our goals, that help us thrive in moments of difficulty and build a life that's truly worth living, a life that's truly successful, whatever that means to you. So that's the space that I work in now. And it's a really exciting place to be because I meet so many exciting and genuine, really genuine people. And I found that that space, that's the key to unlocking our potential. Now, not just a burst of greatness, but something that's truly enduring and meaningful. So I've found in my experience that the people who are living in this space, living the good life, so to speak, people that exude wellness and thriving and alignment, don't just leave it up to chance. They are proactive and intentional and holistic in their approach. And there's this quote by Brendan Burchard that I love. It's it says, if you leave your growth to randomness, you'll always live in the land of mediocrity. And this quote highlights the dangers of an unmanned ship, left to its own devices and natural forces. It's like it's a vessel that could end up aimlessly circling the same section of the sea for eternity, really, or shipwrecked on some random island. And I don't think you all would be here today if you didn't want to be intentional with how you show up and move through the world. And especially now, we're in July, middle of July. This is the time of mid-year reviews. So I thought we could use this as an opportunity to kind of check in and see where we're at, maybe course correct, and also avoid where we might not want to be and showing up in December and looking back on this year and thinking like, man, what did I do with my time? How did I end up here? So asking ourselves the question, am I showing up in the way that I want to show up? Am I working towards my goals? And am I doing it in a sustainable way? Am I treating my body well so that I can actually support what I'm demanding of it? Am I focused on what's important? And are my vision and my daily actions aligned? So we're going to take us through kind of an outline of what we're touching on today, so you get a bit of a roadmap. So I want to talk a little bit about wellness as a whole. Like, what is it to you? What does that look like in your own life? What is the model and the different angles we can approach wellness? And my playing field personally, how do we use like the physical nature of wellness to tap into some deeper areas of wellness as well? I want to talk a little bit about our values. We're going to talk about aspirational versus actual values, anchoring into what's really important, and then as well setting some boundaries around those important pieces of our life so that we can actually make them come to fruition. And then we'll kind of finish up with a bit of a talk around habit forming and breaking, what it means to move towards and away from your goals, how we can attach those habits to meaningful parts of our life so that taps back into the value piece, and then some of the first steps, the practical side of implementing those habits as well. So in the interest of not talking at you for the next half an hour, 45 minutes, I'd like to just pause for a moment. And since we're a smaller group, we might as well just kind of do this together. And I want to ask you the question, what does wellness mean to you? And you can take it any way you want. I'm not going to prescribe any way because I want to just like not give you too many parameters. So just start to think like, what does wellness mean to me? What does it signify? Who or what does it include? How does it feel like? What does it smell like, taste like? How does wellness, a holistic type of wellness, when you think about how you want to move through life, what does that look like? And I know there's a few of us here, we're on video, we're off video, whatever your comfort level is, you don't all have to talk, but it's an opportunity to kind of verbalize that because we're going to build on it as we go throughout the rest of today. So do we have a brave soul who has either a phrase or just a couple of words about what wellness might mean to you?
I can go.
Yeah, Kate.
Wellness to me is feeling good, both physically and mentally, and like just like when your body feels good,
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Feeling good physically and mentally. And does it feel like it's kind of connected, those two?
Totally, yeah. And there's kind of a flow between everything and a harmony.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that word. There's a flow between everything. There's a harmony between what's going on in your mind and in your body. And then that makes you feel like you're in a good place. That makes you feel like you're well. Awesome. Awesome. Anybody else? Something similar? Yeah.
I think for me, it's to feel more alive, present, happy, and just energized.
Alive, present, happy. And then the energy piece as well.
Yeah.
Isn't that crucial? I feel like we all need a little bit more energy. Okay. alive, present. Wonderful. Amazing. Thanks for sharing, Nikisha.
I've got a feeling.
Brianna. Yeah.
I would say connected. So feeling connected within myself and with my body and mind, having that awareness, but also having a better connection with the people and the beings and the nature around me as well.
Yeah. Okay. So two different planes, that awareness of what's going on inside of you, but also the awareness to be connected to, you included everything there as well. I love connected to the people, connected to the nature, connected to everything that's going around, because it's true. We're not living in this bubble or silo. We're connected by everything that's going on around us. Thanks for sharing, Brianna. Anybody else? What does wellness mean to you?
For me, it's present. I think that word was used, present for sure. Both present in your mind, in your body, and kind of knowing kind of instinctively where you need to adjust. I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes those sort of priorities need to flow back and forth, right? You might need to focus on mental or focus on emotional or focus on physical, and kind of adjusting because you're present to know when you need to adjust.
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of like that agility and adaptability to see what's going on right now, because one moment is not equal to the next moment. One day you might have high energy, like Nikisha was saying. The next day you might be low, like, okay, what do I need to do now? Okay, so so Meredith, you were tapping into kind of the awareness piece that Brianna was mentioning, like what's even going on? Okay, now what do I need to do with that? Yeah.
What is required of me? Yeah.
What was that last part?
Like, what is required of me?
Interesting. I like that question. What is required of me? A pause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes we don't even pause, eh? We just kind of like try and like burst through our day, just try and survive.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I had a thought onto that.
Yeah.
The knowing what I need to do for myself sort of thing, that sort of awareness is something that I've been more aware of on like a wellness journey, is like noticing first like what is going on in my body, but then recognizing that my body takes care of me. How can I take care of my body? And being in a space of empowerment where I can take care of my body.
Like a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
Working with your body, not against your body. Absolutely. I want to leave space. I know Allison and Haley are on the line with us. I'm not calling you out. I don't want to force you to speak, but I just want to give you the space to speak if you want to share. I'll give you like a couple second count if you want to pipe in.
For me, I know one big thing I notice is headaches when I'm not so healthy. So that's something that I notice a difference, and it kind of pushes me to keep staying in that space to help me, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I know headaches comes up quite commonly. A lot of people feel that, especially when they're like stressed, overwhelmed, overtired. Is there something that really works for you to kind of like mitigate the headaches?
Not like that I've been able to, figure out. I just feel like when you're eating healthier and actively working out, it seems to decrease them quite a bit. I don't know. I usually do one with the other, so I can't say if one thing helps and the other one doesn't. But
yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's hard to nail down what exactly is that thing, but being aware also what are the cues of when things aren't going very well is also a useful kind of work back plan as well. Oh, thanks, Haley. Appreciate that. Great. The reason why I wanted to kind of take a moment and pause and collect kind of what wellness means to us is because we're going to be building on that as I go through kind of the value piece and the habit piece as well, because if we don't even know what the end goal is, it's a little bit difficult to sort out what we want to implement. So taking the pause to look at that and use this as kind of a building block, if you will. So we had a few different notes about kind of listening to our body, being aware of our body, tapping into nutrition was mentioned, kind of those physical effects, those headaches. I know for me, my sleep is so crucial to my wellness. If I have a good night's sleep, it's a whole different world. And it seems so basic, but it infuses everything else. So we have the kind of physical side of the wellness model, if you will. And then we also have the mental and emotional, what's going on in our thoughts and emotions. I believe it was Brianna who was talking about the connection with others. So community, support system, alignment with our actions and values. Do we have a cognitive dissonance about how we're showing up, or does everything seem aligned? Then there's also like the spiritual aspect of our wellness and nature, however you define that. It seems it's kind of human nature to come back to some sort of spiritual practice or connecting to some sort of deeper meaning and purpose that all seem to be a pillar to wellness. So obviously this talk is about wellness, but it's about also creating sustainable success and being able to move through life in a way that you can look back at it and be proud that you thrived while you were taking care of the important things. So when we get to the section about values, we'll see how we often unwittingly set up our life in the forms of habits or decisions or priorities that sometimes lead us in a direction that doesn't reflect what we find is important. And then that ultimately leads us to burnout, injury, or illness. And those are the things that we want to avoid. But the reason why I use wellness as a starting point, even before I get to goals, priorities, and success, is because it's physical and it's tangible, and those other things aren't. And often we can get into our head about what's working and what's not, and what do I need to do? And I have this list of to-dos. And the physicality of wellness, or the physical side of wellness is helpful because it takes our brain out of the equation. So I mentioned earlier that I recently retired after a long career in sports. And it was a transition. It was a transition and a half. I went from training for hours every day to essentially the exact opposite, sitting in front of a computer, a Zoom, for hours on a day. I moved back from France, where I had made a home, a second home for many years, moved back to Canada. Then there's the transition of identity as well. Like I'm shifting from being a professional athlete to moving into a new chapter of my life. And at the same time, I was onboarding into like 3 different jobs with, I work with RBC and the Smith School of Business and a few different organizations that I work with. So the learning curve was like this. And I'm sure some of you all have gone through those kind of transitions or starting a new job where it's just like overwhelmed, stress, like you're up to here. And I was at a point where some mornings it was really hard to even get out of bed because I felt like there was so much to do. I lost all sort of routine. Even like in the middle of the day, I would be like, okay, I need to take like a break. And I end up watching an entire series of a show. I'm like, what is going on? Especially because like I had such a regimented life for a very long time. I woke up early. I never had that's a lie. I did have difficulty getting up early sometimes, but it was a routine to get up early. I rarely watched TV. So I was doing all the things that I knew wasn't really helpful to me. And I knew all the strategies, I knew all the tips and tricks, and I just couldn't get out of that like rut, you know? But I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for a run today. And I don't know what put that thought in my mind, because I'm an athlete, but I don't like running. I really don't. And I even vowed while I was playing that once I retired, I was never going to run again unless like an axe murderer was chasing me down and I had to run. I didn't see the need for it. But that day I was like, okay, I'm going to go out for a run or a jog. And I did. And the rest of that day, I was like infused with energy, and I was like focused, I was productive, I felt good. Even though you would think it would be the opposite, you think I would be exhausted after not having ran for so long. I hadn't done any sort of like intense physical activity for a long time, but it was exactly the opposite. And that's what I mean by kind of tapping into sometimes the physical side of things, because getting down to the level of the body tends to clear space and capacity and bandwidth to even consider those other tasks, because it can be a blockage. Like your brain can be a blockage if you're too frazzled or frustrated or fatigued. If you're just trying to make it through the day, or your brain is too loud, or you're too exhausted or malnourished, you're in survival mode. You need to find a way to move through that into thriving mode. And for me, it was cutting through that and getting out for a run or some sort of activity like that, where I could get from my head back into my body, into that thriving mode. But when I visualize thriving, like really thriving, I think of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think we all had to learn that in high school. I think of thriving as like the apex of that triangle. And you have to meet those physiological needs, the safety and belonging needs. And then in my humble opinion, I feel like wellness needs to be interwoven in there as well, to ensure that, your mind, body, and soul are being nourished as well. And then I think the next level, going beyond that baseline survival or even baseline success, to longevity and meaning, which is kind of like starting to get to that apex, is intimately linked to our core values. So values, the word, can have many connotations, but what I mean by values is really just what we deem important. And one way we can build on baseline surviving and baseline success and moving into that kind of longevity and purpose is by taking a look at our life and taking assessment of our aspirational values versus our actual values. So aspirational versus actual. Aspirational meaning something that is kind of out there, I'm looking towards and working towards, but it's kind of an ideal. And then we have our actual values, which is like what we're actually doing. So for example, when I say I value my health and I eat cheeseburgers every day, there's a bit of a discrepancy going on there. So that would be aspirational versus actual. Or on the other hand, if I say I value my spending time with my family, but I'm regularly working 80-hour weeks, so I'm always on the road every weekend, you may value it, but there's a point where we need to be a little bit honest about where that ranks in your priority system. So the dissonance between what we say we value and what our actions show we value is sometimes very marked, since time, energy, and attention are our most valuable resources because they're finite. They're a better indicator of what's important to us than our words. And when I speak to people or clients, most of us have a general idea of what we find valuable or what we think we should find valuable. But when asked directly, we're a little bit hazy on the details. We feel like it's clear enough, but like anybody with glasses can tell you, there's a big difference between pretty clear and like actually very clear. And I actually forgot to mention this to Meredith at the beginning, but I have a worksheet that goes through, it's kind of a value discovery thing. And maybe I'll share it with you after, and you can forward that along to people who are here. And it's just a way to kind of like take you through the process of like, okay, what actually do I value? And it's an opportunity to kind of set aside some time and focus in, and see if you're showing up in the way that you want to. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, because identifying what's valuable filters all of the things, even the good things, competing for our attention, and turns our focus to what's truly important, because it reduces distraction and it increases our clarity once we're really clear on those important pieces. And then you can start to make some decisions around boundaries. And sometimes I call them oaths, which is a bit of an old school word, but I think I'm a bit of an old school soul anyways. They're just things that you will not compromise on. So for example, like I will not answer emails after 6 p.m. because that time is for my family. Or I won't take this type of deal, or I won't align myself with these type of products. Protecting what's important, also protecting your sanity sometimes, helps you live with integrity as you kind of follow that personal code. And then that in turn feeds into your wellness and your sustainability, so that you can show up day after day after day, knowing that you're taking care of the important things. So I've talked a little bit about the importance of wellness, the importance of values and committing to those internal oaths or boundaries. But all of that is useless if you can't do the thing. If you try and you fail to implement it, kind of like the aspirational versus actual value. So whether that's in your life or towards a project or a goal. And I have tried, or I had tried and failed for years. Maybe some of you resonate with this, to start a journal. I knew it would serve many purposes, like, verbalizing and moving through situations that are going on, helping to identify trends, things that keep coming up again and again, noticing and celebrating the small wins. And then also like the grand prize of being able to look back and see the tremendous growth, the progress in the path that you've been on. Yet I still had a stack of half-started notebooks and diaries in my closet. Like, you can envision the value, like really believe in it, and still fail to do it. And the thing that made it really stick for me was the pandemic. I was thinking, like, this is too crazy not to document. I need to know what I was thinking day to day. So after years of fits and starts, I've been journaling every day since February 2020, which is wild. But it doesn't require a pandemic to get started. Let's just say that right now. But I think there are two things that are kind of prerequisites or really helpful when we're structuring how we want to approach habit forming or even habit breaking. They're twofold. So meaning and first steps. And what I mean by meaning is wrapping in those values that we were just talking about and that you'll have a chance to do if you go through that exercise. Starting with identifying what's important, and then ensuring that your daily actions are aligned with those. Because this is how what's important stays in the aspirational realm, is like, this is important, but then our life doesn't reflect it. So if we want to bring it into the actual realm, we have to do actual daily actions that reflect it. And sometimes I use daily actions and habits interchangeably, because actions you do daily are habits. So wrapping the meaning into it by identifying what's important, ensuring that your daily actions are aligned to that, and then identifying what's moving you towards your goals, what's moving you away from your goals. And that helps you determine whether you want to build or break those habits. And the other part of the meaning piece is that it adds a tangible motivation when it's tied to your values. If you decide that, okay, I want to start running every day. I don't know why you would do that because running is wild, as you know. But if you decide you want to start running every day and you don't really have like a meaning, or it's not wrapped up in your values some way, on those tough days when it's like really cold out, it's going to be a lot harder to get out there. If you tied it into staying active, keeping your body fit so that you're able to play with your kids or your grandkids, it packs a little bit more punch. It's more salient, it's more palpable. You're able to tie that back into the things that are really anchoring your life. So that's the meaning portion of it. The second portion of it is first steps, because sometimes we can envision the entire habit or the end goal before we even figure out how to take the first step. And that's when it becomes overwhelming. And that's how we fall into procrastination and avoidance, because we can't do the thing because we can't envision how we even start to do the thing. So the hack to that, and I hate the word hack because it's so overused, but the personal Jedi mind trick to that is to make it extremely easy. The first step needs to be extremely easy because you just need to remove the barrier of entry. The barrier of entry is just the obstacle or blockage, whether physical or mental, to doing the thing. So making it extremely easy so that you can take that step and start to build momentum. So in a moment, I'm going to pause again. I'm not going to ask you to do it all together. I'm going to ask you to kind of individually take the time to jot down a few notes about identifying one thing that will move you closer to your goals or your priorities, one thing that you wanted to start doing. And then one thing that's currently moving you away from your goals or your priorities, something that you're like, I don't need to be doing this. So one thing moving you closer, one thing moving you away. And I just want you to identify the obstacle, but really that first step. What's the first easiest step that you can do? So a quick example, I like to get up early in the morning and get some creative work done, for example. And if you're having trouble starting in the morning, maybe something that you can say is like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to be at my desk for 7 a.m. I don't promise that I'm going to do any work at 7 a.m., but I'm going to be at my desk for 7 a.m. and I'm going to stay there for 30 seconds. That's an extremely easy, you're removing the barrier entry because you know you can do that. And then, once you're there, you're probably going to start some sort of work. And even if it's a couple of sentences or a couple of emails or whatever it is for you, you will have already started the ball going, and a little is better than none. Good is better than great, or that's not true. What's the other like cliche? Done is better than
Perfect.
Perfect. There we go. So making it extremely, extremely easy. Okay, so again, to recap, one thing that you want to do that will move you closer to your goals and priorities, identify that first easy step that you can do today. And then one thing that is moving you away from your goals, and identify that first step of either removing or reducing that, okay? So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. Feel free to turn off your video if you feel more comfortable that way. I'm going to pipe in some music because I just learned how to do that too. Let's see if this works.
through the floor from below. I'm listening in when you think you're alone. Alone. I press my ear to the grave. Who keeps you up so late? But you won't hear me complain. As years turn my bones to dust, you change and I adjust. I shift my weight to the side. Futile my tears to your pride. We leave on the bathroom
How are we doing? Do we need another minute, or are we? No. All right. Wonderful. I like to take an opportunity to kind of like actually write it down in the moment, because otherwise you're like, yeah, that's a great idea, and then you move on with your life. So I hope you guys got a couple of gems from yourselves that you're able to make actionable today or tomorrow, whenever you're gonna implement it. So we've had an opportunity to talk about those different components of wellness beyond health. So the whole holistic model of wellness, and when it comes from the physical, the mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever that is, what it looks like to you, tapping into that, especially through your values, and taking a look at the aspirational values versus the actual values that we're holding on to, bringing in the boundaries that we need in order to honor what's really important to us. And then the practical side of that, how that shows up in our daily actions and our habits, and how we can implement that into our lives to show up in the way that we really want to. So all of these different components to me is true wellness, and how we're checking off all of those boxes, helping us strive after our goals, helping us thrive in moments of difficulty, and helping us build a life that's worth living, and what, in my mind, really constitutes true success. So I just want to thank you all for investing the time today, because I think even the work that we did here will start to pay dividends in your life. And I'd also encourage you to kind of continue to revisit this as not kind of a one and done thing. Check in with yourself, hold yourself accountable, ask yourself the hard questions, because it'll pay off in the end. So thank you once again, Meredith, for having me. I think we have an opportunity for kind of just Q&A, or even just discussion if you just want to have a convo around this or anything.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I feel a little bit, if you guys have ever done a therapy session where you walk out and you feel like a bit lighter and clarity, even just having like the words to tie to, and it gives me more of a why. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. As I wrote down my 2 goals, I could actually use language like, oh wow, my need or want or value of X is trumping my other value, and I can see it really, really clearly in how that's affecting me, versus just, oh my gosh, we're here again, what's happening? And that's really helpful for me to have that language to be able to really like see the situation, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's not really a question, but it's just great takeaway. That was the biggest thing for me in that quick exercise. So really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, like, I'm also a visual person. So if I can see it, then I can understand it a little bit more, and like being able to put words to it is super helpful. And in that exercise that I promise I'll send you, that's another component of it as well, because by the end of it, you're meant to have a list of 5 values, and then ranked values as well. And the reason why ranked values is interesting is exactly what you were just speaking to. Like, hey, this value is trumping this, or what I'm doing is trumping this. Should it be trumping that? Should number 5 be trumping 1? And if you have to make a decision around something, if this is ranked higher than this, you need to go with the decision that aligns with your number 1 value. And that helps us kind of like make some of those decisions.
Yeah. Did you
I
guys
have a question, around habits. I find that that often I'll make progress with a new habit, and then I'll be kind of like in the habit of it for a long time, and I'm like really, really enjoying it. And then sometimes it just kind of like fades away. And then I have a hard time with like beating myself up when I'm like, well, I know I can do it because I did it. So why did I stop, and how do I get back into it? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So is the question around starting that up again or stopping the shame spiral?
I think both would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, the first part of it, and it's maybe easy on the face of it, and you might have already said this to yourself, but like shaming yourself is helpful to no one. And we only want to do things that are kind of moving us towards what is helpful. So me beating myself up is detracting from the energy that I can use towards finding a solution. I think sometimes, and I find that as well with some habits that I'm doing, that are important, but maybe not tapped into the meaning piece. I'll like get into habit of it, and after like it loses its novelty, I'll be like, oh, okay, we'll just let it lapse a little bit. It's either, I think, tying it back into something that is really important to you, so that gives you a bit of that extra motivation and fervor, or just simply finding a way to make it interesting again, because our attention does wane. So whatever that might be, I'll give them like a silly example, but sometimes it's useful. If it's, I don't know why I keep going back to running. Like these are the example that's stuck in my head. I promise I don't run every day, but like if like running is getting stale, it might seem a little bit superficial, but like a new pair of pants that you feel like really cute and you like want to put on those pair of pants to like get out and you're like, I feel so good in my new pants. That can freshen it up. Just something that's new, or a new route, or going out with someone, bringing in the social aspect, just finding another angle of doing that with someone or for another reason. Because sometimes if we're just doing it by ourselves and we lose the meaning behind it, it can get a little stale. You're right.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kate.
I have another question if no one else does. So I've always had this belief, and I don't know why, but that, you know, sometimes it's your family who needs you. And so you need to kind of really focus in on that. Or sometimes it's work, or sometimes it's yourself from a, you know, mental, emotional. So, but I find that can be a slippery slope a little bit. So I admire these people that can wake up and have like these routines that encompass all of those elements. But what happens when, I find work is the easiest example to give. Like, what if things are just really, really busy and that requires you to, maybe you had said earlier, like, I don't answer an email after 6 o'clock. Like, do you make exceptions? Or is it like, no, Meredith, like that is the way it needs to be. And that's what's going to stick and create this, I hate the word balance, but like, you know what I mean by that harmony. Like, is there a better route to take? Because I tend to shift into what needs me. Other things get left behind.
I'm glad you brought this up, because this is a great point, and it ties in like the real world. For a long time, I was of the ilk, if you will. Who uses that word, ilk? I'm such a weirdo. I was of the ilk of like, no, you need to commit to a routine. And maybe that's like in the pro sphere, because like things need to be regimented. I need to wake up at this time and I need to do this routine so that I can have a high performance on this day for this game. But real life isn't always like that. Even in that sphere, you do have motivating, you have different responsibilities, things change, things are in flux. And I was talking with a colleague of mine who is brilliant, and he kind of challenged me on this idea, not just only on routine, but of balance. You mentioned balance. Balance is not 50-50.
Right.
Balance is determining what you're able to do and when you need to recover. So to your point, you can work perhaps a 7-day streak when you have to go balls to the wall, like, you know, going after it and getting things done because this is a busy season. And you have the capacity to do that, the awareness that you can do that, but you also have to have the foreknowledge and built in a time for recovery after that to ensure that you're then getting the equilibrium, because it's not, I'm splitting my day like this, this, and this. Maybe it's 4 on, 2 off, or whatever that looks like. So balance is not so strict in the way that I think we often come to it, but playing and being aware of what that means in your life as well.
That I like the way that you phrased that. Like, because I am very much like a go hard, but I just naturally, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go hard because I'm off next week, you know? So it's just, but the way you phrased it makes a lot more sense than what just kind of happens in my head. So,
and the other piece of that as well is like, what's balance for you is not balance for someone else.
Right. Yeah.
So like the comparison game, we know, is lethal.
Yeah.
And also in our expectations of other people as well. Maybe we expect them to be going as hard as we are, and that could be unhealthy for them. So that we need to increase our empathy around that as well, but also our empathy and grace for ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
I've got a question. I'm big on values, setting goals, vision boards, like that's my thing.
Mhm.
And for me, sometimes I like with this whole exercise that we did about, trying to understand like what's the one step you can do to get closer to your goal.
Mhm.
I'm all about achieving goals, but for me, I do get fatigued a little bit because it's like you're going, striving, achieving, and striving and achieving, and then it's almost like kind of goal burnout. And so for me, like I guess my question is like, what can you do to keep the motivation there? Like the motivation is there. It's just, it gets tiring after a while because you're not, in my mind, I'm not seeing the progress as fast as I'd like to, right? And so to reset and just kind of put things in perspective, I have a hard time with because I just think, okay, well, maybe I need to like go harder or like
Mhm.
learn more to go like just to get there faster. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know what my question is, but basically, I think what I'm trying to get to is there a way to, or I guess, reassess or reevaluate just so that you're not burning yourself out in like this goal setting? I know the first step that you mentioned, I think that's very helpful. But I feel like, it can get tiring after a while.
Mhm. Absolutely, especially when it's a longer term goal as well. And exactly like you said, you're working, you're not progressing as quickly as you would like. That inherently has a bit of a fatiguing quality in it as well. And that completely resonates with me. I can be impatient when I'm working towards something. You want to see the results right away.
Yeah.
Um, do you have built in, so I assume you have your goals and you
Yeah.
kind of like progressively chunked it out to different stages.
Yeah.
Do you have a list of goals that you need to, I mean, if we think about like a software, like a project management software, do you have your goal and then all of the tasks that you need to do?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Do you have those tasks sorted into different segments or stages?
Yeah, it depends, but yes, I do kind of chunk it down to like what are the action steps I need to take.
Mhm.
And then sometimes, for me, I think it's really just, okay, I took the step, don't see the progress yet. Okay, so I feel like maybe it's just probably impatience that I have with the process.
Yeah.
Because I guess in my mind, I'm like, okay, they said to do X, I did X, right? And so then it's just kind of that fatigue of just consistently working through the goal. And I guess maybe it just comes down to patience. As
I
I'm
mean,
talking.
obviously, yeah, obviously patience, but like also, so the thing with goals is that you get like a reward at the end. You get the external validation of like, here's the finished product, and people all clap for you, and we're like, hurrah, I've done it. But like you're speaking to, there's so much work between then and now. So
Yeah.
how do we get some of that validation between
Yes.
here and there?
Yeah.
So if you have some of those different levels that you're going through, finding a way to incorporate some sort of, whether it's an acknowledgement of your work, whether that's a reward system, even that's a small reward, like I get to this point, I'm having a bubble bath and wine and acknowledging that I made it this far. Because sometimes we discount how much work those first 5 steps are. Sometimes those are the hardest parts, and we are like, oh, I haven't finished. So celebrating the small wins on the way to the big win is crucial for that continued motivation.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I jump in with a sort of lived experience thing with that?
Yeah.
I've been trying to prioritize my physical health for about a year and a half now, and it's taken seeing a lot of professionals, making a lot of appointments to figure out what's going on. And it was getting very tiring. It still is tiring quite often after all of this to continue to just have to do the same thing until there's finally a result. So I started kind of benchmarking it by, okay, I make the appointment, I make sure I have everything ready for the appointment. I go to the appointment, and then after the appointment, I get Starbucks.
I love
And that's
it.
my little way of just recognizing like, hey, I did a thing. It was really hard. It took me a lot of energy, but it's an important thing that even though I don't like it, it's helping me on my way towards this goal, prioritizing this value. And so that's just like a small thing that I do, but it's helped a lot in the past few months.
That's so good. Breaking it down, because how hard is it sometimes picking up the phone and doing it? I know I've carried over week after week after week, like there's a note like call so and so, and I
Yeah.
don't do it. So like that is an accomplishment in and of itself. Now, what Starbucks order do you get? Is it like the same thing, or is it like you switch it up every time?
So I've actually been making it, I try a new thing every time because I do go to Starbucks outside of that, but that specific Starbucks trip after the doctor is when I splurge a little bit and try something new.
Yeah, no, that's nice. So that's kind of going back to what we were talking about with Kate's question, kind of making it unique, something different,
Mhm.
so that sets it apart as a celebratory, yes, I did it, and now I'm going to try something new at Starbucks. That's
Yeah.
great.
A few people have told me it's silly, but I don't care.
Those are
It's
haters.
helping.
Don't listen to them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Amazing. Any other cues or Meredith from you, from your side, or?
No, that was so good. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, well, thank you so much. I have 2 pages of notes. And I'll be watching it back again. But I'm actually really excited to jot down a few things as things are really, really fresh from this conversation. And I plan to share some things with some people with my team and my family to really kind of like not make them accountable or anything, but I feel like it makes it more real and putting it out there. So
So true.
thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And this
Yes,
was
of
like
course.
just a great group. You guys had fantastic questions. Thank you so much for your engagement and energy. I really appreciated it. So happy to be here and share with y'all.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.